Okay, it looks like it's a minute after 3, so we'll go ahead and get started with this afternoon's water session. So welcome everyone, and during this session, we will be utilizing the chat box for any questions or comments that you have for the presenters. Our first presenter is Bruce Robinson with the Intertribal Council of Arizona. Bruce, you have the floor.
Karen. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Intertribal Environmental Council Conference. As Karen said, my name is Bruce Robinson. I work for the Intertribal Council of Arizona, and I'm their Technical Assistance Project Manager. So it's very nice to have this opportunity to get with you. So we're going to talk today about emergency response planning and the changes that have occurred because of the American Water Infrastructure Act. So first, I'll give you a background on the regulations. I mean, I think it's always good to know why we do things. And the evolution of emergency response planning really kind of came out in 9/11. I mean, it renewed emphasis after 9/11. That same year in October, the U.S. Patriot Act was passed and the law, and it identified that our drinking water supply as a critical infrastructure that needed protection. The following year, we passed the Public Health Emergency and Bioterrorism Response Act. That's a mouthful. And it really said, that our focus needs to be not only on natural disasters, but malevolent acts as well. And that's something caused by people, that's a cyber attack or an attack like 911. These things are happening much more frequently now. And then in May of 2003, we modified the Safe Drinking Water Act because we added a section called Section 1433. And that was really important because that is the reason that you have to do an emergency response plan. If you remember in the American Water Infrastructure Act, it says if you have 3,300 customers or more, you need an emergency response plan and a risk resilience assessment. However, if you look at the Safe Drinking Water Act, Section 1433, it says you have to have, as a utility, you've got to have the emergency response plan and the vulnerability assessment, or you can be penalized. So let's fast forward a few years now, and let's talk about the American Water Infrastructure Act, passed by Congress in October of 2018. It's the most far-reaching changes to the Safe Drinking Water Act since 1996 amendments. It replaced the 2002 Bioterrorism Act for ERPs. It changed its vulnerability assessments to risk and resilience assessments. It also has a section 2013B, which sets up the schedule for certification. And we're going to talk more about certification here in a second. So your ERP and your risk resilience assessment have different completion dates. The change in the submittal process is that we're not submitting documents anymore. We're submitting certificates that say that we have the document in place. And you have to submit your risk resilience assessment certificate first, and then they've given you additional time in order to prepare your emergency response plan. But I want you to remember you have to do a separate certification for each document. So the focus is really now on risk and resiliency of your utility. And, you're going to hear those words so much, they're going to be a household term after a while. Keep in mind, the vulnerability assessment goes away. That was our qualitative assessment of risk, right? That's what we said, yeah, we got a chance of wildfire, so we should include it in our emergency response plan. Now we quantify it. We say the chance that we're going to have a wildfire is going to be 0.00234, whatever. So the other change that American Water Infrastructure Act did was we now do threat analysis. We have a focus on quantifying risk and the cost for the recovery from that emergency. The American Water Infrastructure Act also set into place a provision where we now have to go through incident action checklists. ITCA does 3 or 4 for each emergency response plan, but an incident action checklist is it's a pretty standard thing. It is a questionnaire. It's about 30 questions that you self-administer, you ask yourself, and that tells you how well you're doing on that particular topic. Now, the topics for these incident action checklists, which can be found on the EPA's website, are, imagine that, cybersecurity, pandemic, power outage, wildfires, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, drought. And so you decide what is most applicable to you, and then you complete these. And we then include them in the emergency response plan. So changes. Note in general, EPA is asking for your risk resilience assessment, your ERP submittals 6 months apart. They're giving you extra time. I bless your heart for that, because this is a huge undertaking for most utilities to do emergency response plan. Most utilities don't have technical writers, right? That's why we're doing this, and that's why it's important in my organization. Yeah, so they're 6 months apart, but for ITCA, we have to produce a risk resilience assessment to figure out what's going to be in the emergency response plan. So we're actually doing them at the same time. So what we have done is we've combined them in one 3-ring binder. And we also, in that 3-ring binder, is a thumb drive with all the electronic information on it. Because, if you've ever worked with a utility, you know that emergencies don't happen when the utility director's in the office. They happen when they're on vacation or someplace else, right? So the other thing that's a big change, and we'll talk about just briefly here, is a certification process, okay? I want you to know that I don't know how it happened, but the database in EPA headquarters is capable of accepting information or certificates for utilities that serve greater than 3,300 people. We all know that a lot of our tribal utilities are much smaller than that. They're very small systems. And as a result, ITCA has taken steps so that the utilities that we are preparing the documents for are sending them through the United States Postal Service certified mail. That way, you've got a copy of the receipt, that green sticker up in the upper right-hand corner of your slide, and you've got the copy of the certification letter, and you've got your emergency response plan and risk resilience assessment all in one place, right? Keep that, be ready when they come to do your sanitary survey, hand it to them, show them that you're certified, show them the dates in your document, and show them the certified mail receipt. So that's, I think, really important. And I've spoken with headquarters, and they're trying to put an additional database together that will support tribal utilities that serve less than 3,300. So I put together a couple slides for you. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail. Let's just say that if you're a utility and you serve greater than 3,300 people and you haven't sent your certification to the EPA telling them that your risk resilience assessment and your ERP are up to date and complete, then you missed the deadline because it was June 30th, 2021. But here's all the dates based upon the size of the community, and then you'll notice that on the ERP here, the difference is there's a 6-month difference. Your emergency response plan has to be certified 6 months after your risk resilience assessment. So I really want to talk to you now about why are these ERPs and, emergency response plans and risk resilience assessments important. Your emergency response plan incorporates the results of a risk resilience assessment and focuses for us on vulnerability and resilience. That's the theme now, right? Risk resilience assessment creates a prioritized plan for security upgrades, modification of operational procedures, and policy changes to mitigate the risks and vulnerabilities to critical utility assets. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Those are called asset threat pairs. Okay, so we've got an asset, and here are the threats to that asset. So EPA is very focused on utility resilience to adverse conditions now. That's the new focus for us. Okay, I got a couple slides for you. They're just an outline of our document. This is our emergency response plan. And it starts off with an executive summary, which is really important, okay? That is a tool for you. It's designed for you to be able to share with others. You can share it with tribal council. You can share it with your tribal chairman that may be signing the certification letter for you and wants a overview of what he's signing for. So anyway, we like the executive summary. It doesn't contain personal PII, personal identifiable information. That's the beauty of it. So you can share it with others. Following the executive summary, we have updated our emergency response plan to have a pandemic special insert. It talks very specifically about how the pandemic affects utilities and what sort of things you need to do to make sure it doesn't have an adverse effect on your operations. The next document, the next chapter that is called How to Use This Document. And it goes into detail with regards to each chapter so you know what's in there. If you're a reader and you don't have time to read the whole document, it will tell you where to find the elements that you're looking for, that you're interested in. So chapter 2 then is our system overview. So we take your sanitary survey and we interview you and we write up what your system is, what sort of filtration it has, what sort of disinfection it has, what sort of storage it has, what water sources are. We put all this information in to this chapter so that, again, someone that is less familiar with your system than you might be has an overview and can find the information they need in short time. Chapter 3 is emergency planning and preparedness. This just explains what an emergency response plan is, what the elements are, and how to use them. The actual details of emergency response start in chapter 4 and then finish up in chapter 6. The difference is chapter 6, specific incident response procedures. It's kind of like a standard operating procedure for emergency response plans. A good example would be, I'm going to have to do a boil water notice. So you go to chapter 6, and chapter 6 is going to tell you what the steps are to do that. It's going to have a template in there for you. And then backing up a little bit here, then chapter 5 is your risk resilience assessment process. So it's a lot like chapter 3. It's talking about the concepts of risk resilience and how it's applied. And so that's then chapter 5. There are 7 appendices, and I'm only going to mention one, and that's Appendix G. That's your risk resilience assessment. That's done through the voluntary self-assessment tool on the EPA website. So they realized how difficult it was going to be for the average person to actually do a risk assessment. So what they did was they developed an online tool to help us, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. So now I'm going to talk about the risk resilience assessment. Okay, and it's a very it's a difficult subject. This is something that it takes time to learn how to do. But let's start with some definitions. Okay, first off, resilience is the capability of a water system to maintain operations or recover when a malevolent or natural hazard occurs. Okay, and so then if you say risk resilience, that is the ability of an organization to anticipate and address any risk. And the risks and resilience assessments evaluate the vulnerabilities, threats, and the consequences from potential hazards. Again, remember we were talking about asset threat pairs. So you have an asset, might be your water well. and you have a list of certain threats that could impact that water well. So that's the asset threat here. Real briefly, I just want to have the risk calculation in here so you know that we are talking about mathematics. And so your risk, that's your threat, is your threat likelihood times your asset criticality, which I kind of like the term consequence of failure better. And then you multiply that times your asset vulnerability to the threat. And that's how you come up with this numerical value that is your risk. So let's talk a little bit about the process. The risk resilience assessment report is generated using, put this in here for your reference, it's EPA Vulnerability Self-Assessment Tool, and we call it VSAT, and it's web version 2.0. Please, if you Google that and you see version 6.0, it's not a newer version of this. I don't know what it is. It has nothing to do with this process, but it always pops up. So just give you that heads up. If you go to the EPA or go to the internet and type in EPA Vulnerable Self-Assessment Tool version 2.0, you'll get what you need. The EPA designed VSAT to assist community water systems with meeting the requirements for your risk resilience assessment in the American Water Infrastructure Act. VSAT allows utilities to identify threats that present the highest risks, and with evaluating the costs and the benefits of countermeasures to reduce those same risks. So there's 4 steps. The first thing you're asked to do by the application, computer application, is to develop your utility resilience index. The initial step, once you've the URI, the utility resilience index, is a risk management tool to assess the utility's capability to respond and recover from an incident impacting critical operations. So there are 12 categories. These were determined by the EPA, and they looked at the American Water Infrastructure Act, and they said, what indices do we need to look at? Well, you need to look at your emergency response plan. Do you have one? How good is it? Your national incident management system, do you have one? Your mutual aid and assistance, your emergency power, do you have that? What's your daily demand? So I'll not list off the rest, but they are in the notes for this slide. This is slide 13. And so that's there for you in case you want to look at it. And this is going to be confusing. I mean, I really think URI calculation is sort of, it's a sort of an odd thing. So you take each of those 12 indicators, and you score a value of 1 to 5, how you think your utility is doing on that indicator. Okay, 1 being we're doing horrible, 5 meaning we're right on target. Then the URI is determined by the percentage of participants, people that scored it, that have favorable findings in the indicators. In other words, closer to 4 or 5 versus 1, which means that no, we're failing at that. So then you take those totals. So if 50 to 70% of the people that participated think you're doing a good job, then that's a fairly typical response. You get 70 to 85%, that's really exceptional. You're a rock star utility. All right, so after we've done the utility resilience index, the next step, the next series of questions on the online application is for a qualitative risk assessment. Okay, it reviews the asset categories. It determines the ones that are critical to providing safe drinking water, protecting human health, and sustaining the economy of the community. Great example would be your source water. Okay, and physical barriers. We have fencing up. pipes, constructed advances, water collection and intake. Is it all in good operating condition? So after we've done the qualitative risk assessment, we do a quantitative risk assessment. And believe it or not, this is an option. It's an optional task. However, it's incredibly important. ITC always includes it. We always do it. The information needed for your quantitative risk assessment is you need a list of the high risk utility assets. Again, these are critical assets. These are your conveyance pipe. This is your water tower. This is your water source, the pump. I'm sorry, it'd be more applicable to say the pump in the water source. And so then you list the threats that could disrupt these critical operations. So what do you get? You get an asset and you get a threat, and we call these asset threat pairs. Now, the last task is to prepare a countermeasure analysis. Again, an optional task, but one that's really important. And I think it makes your risk resilience assessment much easier to understand. The information you need for a countermeasure analysis is you need a list of existing countermeasures, things that you're doing to prevent an emergency, and also potential countermeasures the utility may adopt. And then you need a cost component, and they want to know the entire cost. They want to know what your annualized capital cost is. Now, if you've got if you're, not as common with tribal utilities, but a lot of utilities have financing costs. You would need to know what that is. You're also going to need to know your operation and maintenance costs. Because you can see, we're getting way down the road toward asset inventory, asset management plans, aren't we? You can kind of see how these things all interplay. So now the steps to complete your risk resilience assessment, we're going to now summarize our baseline risk assessment. Based on these inputs into VSAT, the program produces an asset summary table. It's just a nice report, and that's the report that we include in Appendix G. And in that, we're going to, you'll find this asset summary table. And the table shows the monetized risk summary for each of the asset threat pairs. And these baseline risk assessment results reflect your existing countermeasures, and improvement results reflect enhanced mitigation with the selected potential countermeasures in place. This is the table. I apologize. It's very difficult to get a screenshot of this. I'll just say that this is your asset assessment summary, and you can see there in blue it says asset threat pair. Well, the one that we're evaluating here is IT systems and cyber intrusion, so asset threat. And then it's got that monetized risk. It assigns a numerical value so you know what the cost for preventing that at the countermeasure would be. I'm going to back up for a minute. We're kind of winding down here. I've got a couple more slides. I want to talk about the pandemic for a second, and then I'll kind of summarize the talk and kind of give you an idea of what's important. The pandemic, for a guy that does emergency response plans, I hate to say that that's only one of the only good things about it was it presented us with a very nasty situation that tested the resilience of our utilities. Oh my gosh, in so many ways. So ITCA's emergency response plan template has been updated. It was updated in March of 2020. Thinking back, it was updated when all of the CDC guidelines started coming into place. And so what we did was we updated our template and our sections in our emergency response plan to be robust on pandemic response. So you've got everything you need to know. We try to keep you in the office and keep you working. The emergency response plan should be updated to integrate pandemic response. If we're not doing it for you, please take the time to put that together. Oh gosh, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share our materials, or be happy to do the emergency response plan for you. So COVID-19 affects employee health. It affects your staffing. your ability to deal with emergencies, customer service, utility budgets, your regulatory compliance and reporting. Oh my gosh, daily monitoring logs, DMRs. Oh my gosh, all the EPA regions were sharing with me how difficult it was for them to get, the monitoring reports. That's serious because if you don't get your monitoring reports in, it's going to be a deficiency and it's going to be an enforcement action. So what I experienced, what came out of COVID for me was a number of conversations with EPA regional offices and headquarters. I work in EPA regions 5 through 10. And, these were common to all of the regional offices. They were asking me, could I please assist with generating standard operating procedures? And could we help with cross-training of utility tasks? Why? Because when the pandemic hit, two things happened. One, people got sick and couldn't come to work. Other utilities got their funding cut, so they had to furlough people. I had a utility director that was on 80% time up until this month. Just this month, he went back to full time. So what happens is you don't have the money, so you have to furlough people. Now you got some stranger doing a task he's never done before. So standard operating procedures is really important. And please cross-train your employees. Make sure the distribution guy can step in and he can do treatment for a day if he needs to, or make sure that the treatment guy knows how to fix a line break. All really important. And the other thing it taught us was how important financial independence is for a tribal utility. So my goal, my mission statement for my technical assistance group is to try to make tribal utilities self-sustaining. And this is why. We don't want to be affected by outside sources. We don't want to be affected by the general fund for the community or the commercial enterprises that we depend on for revenue from the tribe to be in place. We want to be self-sufficient. The way we do that is we develop asset inventories and asset management plans. Then once we've got that in place, we can do a rate study for you. From that, we can figure out what your reserve fund should be and how much to set aside at a time, and even develop a capital improvement program for you. So when you're making that upgrade to a new treatment plant, or you're updating your distribution system, that you have that planned into the whole system. Beautiful thing about asset management plan is it's called Table 8, and it is a table that summarizes what your cost will be over a 10-year period. So you get an annual budget, and it fluctuates up and down depending on what sort of critical assets you're having to refurbish or renew or replace. Sorry. Well, in conclusion, I look at the American Water Infrastructure Act as an opportunity. I think about how fortuitous it was for us that it was passed prior to the pandemic. I think it would have been a lot worse. I really think that if we've got a good emergency response plan and risk resilience assessment in place, a lot of the things that happened with the power outages in the southern part of the United States could have been avoided. I know that would be addressed in our emergency response plans. So it's a living document, it's something you want to pick up and you want to, since it does have a lot of standard operating procedure in it, it's something you would become familiar with and you want to utilize. It's definitely a resource. It's not just a piece of paper sitting on the shelf. I used to write these all the time, and I really didn't like emergency response plans. And that was with my previous employment when I was working for myself. I found them difficult to read. So when I came to ITCA and they asked me to develop emergency response program, we made it very readable. So if you're working with us, it is a document that you can open up every day and put to use. The AWA, American Water Infrastructure Act requirements ensure your emergency response plan will reflect the findings of your risk resilience assessment. So emergency preparedness involves a new way of conducting day operation. It's just like having a safety program. Next thing you know, you're applying those skills that you've learned at work, at home, helping your kids stay safe, be careful of sharp objects, don't fall off the ladder, all the various things. Those are all important, right? It's a culture that we learn. And emergency preparedness is a culture too. So an ERP presents concepts and actions that ensure a safe drinking water supply in the face of adverse events. That would be a pandemic. Successful implementation requires integration with existing policies and procedures and continuing support from the community. It's important, always is, that you have the support of your board, got the support of your tribal council, got the support of your community members. And this is a way to advocate for your utility, because we have an emergency response plan in place. You talk to your fire department, you talk to the police department and your emergency providers so they know you're ready. Okay. This emergency response plan really provides a tactical level plan for immediate response to incidents of all types. So it's boots on the ground. That's the importance of it. If you have questions, I'd like to answer them for you.
Thank you, Bruce. I don't see any questions in the chat box to me just yet. You might want to check your chat box. And also, if you're calling in, if you have any questions, you'll probably need to email me or Bruce. I can forward it on to Bruce.
Right. And Karen, I really would be wonderful if you would feel free to share the PowerPoint. There's a lot of good information in there. And I kind of, the thing I hate about PowerPoints is when you get back to the office and you go look at it and it's abbreviated to so much that you can't really get anything out of it. So I tried to make this so it would be a useful tool for people.
Yes, that's
so
true.
I think I just hit the escape button and that'll take me out of here, right?
Yeah, or there's it should be hover at the top and it should say something, stop sharing.
All right. And yeah, Karen, I don't see any chats. Okay.
Okay. We've had a comment, and I think it's to you also. And I will definitely share your PowerPoint. So if anybody would like a copy of it, just let me know. Did you see the comment?
I'm sorry, Karen, you cut out there.
Did you see the comment? Someone made a comment to you and to me.
Oh, somebody did?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess I don't know how to see that, Karen.
Oh, I think you're still sharing your screen. So if you hover at the top of your screen, there should be something that pops up that says stop sharing screen or something to that.
Oh gosh, I got minimized so much I can't see anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. We appreciate it. And you should be able to see your chat box now. Okay, so if anybody wants to put questions in there, we can come back afterwards and just make sure. And Bruce, if they put anything in the chat box, I'll make sure that I get a copy of it and send it to you.
Good.
Later. And I understand if you need to jump off now. So thank you very much for the presentation. We really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy yourself.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Nice
Okay,
to meet you today, Bruce.
thank you.
All right. Thank you.
And our next presenter is Bruce Jones with Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. And Bruce, thank you very much, and you have the floor.
Super. All right. So let me just, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And I will share that and let me know if you could see it.
Yes, and it's the large version.
Hey, isn't that amazing? All right. Technology. Well, thank you all for inviting me to join you today to present the Tribal Water Quality Data Exchange. My name is Bruce Jones, and I'm the SHEAP Section Manager for the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. And I've been with the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission for the past 14 years, serving our 20-member tribes in Western Washington. And previously to being employed here, I was employed by the Quinault Indian Nation, and they're on the coast of Washington State. And I was with them for about 30 years, serving in multiple positions. I want to thank you for the opportunity, like I said, to share this solution. I think it's really great, and hopefully it will serve as an opportunity for some of you to take advantage of it. But I want to let you know that this exchange is freely available to you, and we will provide assistance to get you started. This is a self-contained water quality data management solution, and it's installed behind your tribe's firewall. And the data cannot be assessed by anyone unless you share the data. And another advantage of this solution is that if you don't modify the client or the database, then as we update like the lookup tables or domain lists, sometimes EPA will send us things that need to be updated. Then as you log in, you will get updated on the new version. So we actually will do the administration for you on this exchange. But before I go on, I want to explain a little bit more about the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. And we have been in existence since 1974, U.S. versus Washington ruling, known as the Bolt decision, that reaffirmed the tribe's treaty reserve fishing rights. We consist of 20 treaty tribes in Western Washington, and our organization provides direct services to member tribes to assist them with their natural resource management. And we have about 70 employees, and our main office is in Olympia, Washington, the state capital. And one of the programs within the commission is the Salmon and Steelhead Habitat Inventory and Assessment Program, or we like to call it SHEAP. And I'm the manager of this program, and we have 7 employees, a manager, a GIS analyst, a GIS specialist, GIS data technician, and 3 regional biologists. We work closely with the Point-to-Point Treaty Council, and they have 2 staff that assist us in providing services to the tribes. We are an Esri GIS shop utilizing ArcPro, Enterprise, and ArcGIS Online. We call our information management platform Aquascape, which you see on the screen now. And we provide our members, tribes, with data management, analysis, and data sharing assistance. This diagram is our platform. It contains data development tools, or tool development, data exchanges, and information sharing. We also assist non-member tribes across the country who request assistance, and we provide assistance as time allows. With a larger project, with a non-member tribe, we will ask you to go through the mentorship program of the Tribal Exchange Network Group, or the TXG, to seek financial support so that we can dedicate time to your project, or we can find other mentors that could jump in and help out. And there's a website on the bottom here. I'll supply all the slides to Karen, so you guys will get these. But there's a website there to go to our SHEAP webpage. We have built several of these data exchanges, and just recently launched the Fish Management Exchange last month. to our member tribes. And these are all available to you if you wanted to use them. They can be used internally. And the one I'm going to be talking about in just a little bit is the Water Quality Exchange. Our data exchanges provide a means for our 20-member tribes to manage and share data to support their tribal habitat strategy. We developed a strategy, the tribes have, and these exchanges, which you see, help tribes manage their data and be able to share data internally within staff and also between tribes. And it helps them focus their efforts in implementing this strategy. So you can check out our webpage and our website. The address is down below. This is a story map that you can go to that we built to explain a little bit about the tribal habitat strategy. I mentioned earlier the Tribal Exchange Network Group, or the TXG group. It's a tribal technical staff who have come together to assist tribes with data management, analysis, and sharing, very similar to the SHEAP approach. We have a website with a lot of information for you, and on the website in the lower left-hand corner is the request a mentor section, which you can see on towards the center of the page there. So on there, if you click on that, you'll get a one-page form. You just fill it out, and you normally will get a fairly quick response from us, and then we'll work with our team to get the best support we can to help you out with your technical issue. And you can see on the lower side, there's the tribalexchangenetwork.org. Check out that webpage, and we definitely would appreciate you getting involved. This is the current membership of the Tribal Exchange Network group, and it's tribal staff from across the country, from California to Maine, Washington to Oklahoma. We have dedicated our time as volunteers to this effort to help tribes, and together we have over 40 years experience doing this. I've been involved with the exchange since 2007, and the Tribal Exchange Network Group, we basically promote tribal sovereignty, capacity building, and equity to enhance tribal participation in the exchange network. And if you haven't checked out the EPA Exchange Network, you want to do that. You can just Google EPA Exchange Network. It's a fairly easy way to build capacity within your tribe, to build database and exchanges and be able to manage data. We advocate for the improved access to funding and resources that support tribal needs. And this effort is supported by the Institute of Tribal Environmental Professionals, the ITEC folks down in Northern Arizona University, and through this a cooperative assistance agreement with the EPA. It's a fantastic program. I encourage you to get involved. We're always looking for volunteers to be members or a mentor. So check it out and get online. If you have any questions, if you're interested, send us an email. We definitely like to have you get on board. And also later this year, we will have additional tribal trainings, and we are planning a conference for next spring. It'll be somewhere down south, and we don't know where yet. But this year we plan to continue our Tribal Data Academy series. Last year we did one on R software, and this year I think we're going to pick up R. We might be doing some other issues, and we haven't finalized that yet, but keep your eyes open for that. And so now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the Tribal Water Quality Data Exchange. The Tribal Water Quality Data Exchange was constructed in two separate phases. The first being completed in 2009. This exchange is free to the user. Like I said, it's a standalone system within your firewall. We built it that way because our member tribes are sovereign governments. They don't want anybody coming inside their firewall and nor messing around with their data. So we serve the tribes in our consortium, and so we built the system that way to be installed within the tribal firewall. The exchange basically will assist the user to normalize their data into the WQX schema and it makes it easy to analyze and then share the data with tribes and also with EPA. And the before I go too much farther, I just wanted to let you know the funding came from 2 separate EPA Exchange Network grants. Our contractor was Windsor Solutions. They're based out of Portland, Oregon, at least the office we worked with. And I want to give a special thanks to EPA for supplying the funding and support. And just want to special recognize to our member tribes for their guidance and support throughout this project. Our partners on this project have been the Washington State tribes. There's 29 of them up there. 20 belong to our commission. And there's during the second phase, we partnered with the United South and Eastern tribes. They're located down there in Nashville, Tennessee, and they're on the East Coast. And they really helped us build this second phase. And over the 2 projects, we worked together to develop a solution that met the individual tribal needs and those of the EPA Exchange Network. The goals of this project were basically 4 basic goals, and one was to develop and implement a water quality data management solution to facilitate the tribe's management, analysis, and sharing of water quality and quantity data. We wanted to enhance our computer systems to accommodate software needs. We weren't equipped for this type of exchange, and we beefed up our systems. We needed to implement a system that would facilitate the tribe's submittal of water quality data to meet the requirements of the Section 106 EPA program, which we did. And we wanted to also address the key training and mentoring needs of our tribes. We knew going into this, we need to train tribes on how to use the client and also how to use basic SQL. And so those training sessions were held and were a success. And the objectives of this project was we wanted to improve the tribe's ability to manage and share their water quality data. And back before we started, tribes were managing their data some were in databases, some were in Excel spreadsheets. And so we wanted to help normalize that, bring that together. We needed to develop a system that would accommodate multiple group goals and content. Each of our tribes have different needs, and so we had to develop a system that was somewhat flexible. We wanted to meet the information access needs of decision makers. People needed to know the information about the data results and what we're coming up with, and so we needed to find a way of creating these, making the data accessible and be able to create reports for the decision makers. We needed a system that would protect the tribe's data, provide security and that they expected from us. And the last is to simplify ecosystem level analysis, being able to share data between tribes and roll up that information into a sub-region or a regional data set for analysis. That's really important when you're dealing with a state or federal agency. You need to be able to roll that up and have the tribes come together. And so this allows the tribes to do that. The components of this data exchange is a SQL database. It's a client. The client is a front-end app that sits on your computer. So that's some of our tribes don't have access to SQL. It's tied up inside IT department. And so this client allows them to interact with that SQL database without getting into SQL. And there's if you look on this client and in the upper left, you see that there's a collection activities up in the upper left, and that's where you would input your collection activities of going out sampling. And the lower ones, the biological habitat indices. So that's where you would insert those. Up on the right, you provide data to a partner. That way, in this situation, you would send data to our node, but you would probably want to redirect that to your own server. And then you would import data from your server or from your partner. You could also import data from Storette, the old Storette, now it's the water quality portal. And then the one right in the center there says view data reports. That's actually a SQL scripts that are embedded in the SQL database that creates reports out of the data. And then the bottom section is just administration of the client. And And then moving on, you have a bulk import template. That's an Excel spreadsheet we built in-house that basically allows you to import large amounts of data into the system without using the interface of SQL. And then the lower right is a water quality time series database, which we are building in-house. It's a SQL database that will take this time series data, which is very large, as you know, and then condense it down to those the results that you need, like mid, max, and mean, and 70 ADM, etc. And then be able to, you run procedures in there, and you just push the button, and it'll actually run the procedure for you and push the data over to the tribal water quality database. So that's coming out really soon. Probably it'll be this winter, maybe early next year, and would be available. The deployment progress so far, we have 16 of our 20 tribes are using it. 4 of our tribes had their own system. They didn't want to convert. Then we had non-member tribes around the country that are using it, from California, Alaska, Tennessee, etc. So some tribes are using it. The deployment process is very easy. Basically, you would first go and obtain your NAS account, which is a Network Authorization Authentication Service that EPA provides to states, tribes, and territories to obtain an account password for the use of exchanges. And from there, you would, at the same time, you could be accessing your Microsoft SQL, or you can download the free version of Express version that's available on their website. That's basically what I use. I use the Express, but many folks like to have the SQL Server installed. Once those are set up, then you run a script that's included in the client installation instructions, and that script would then build the database and install the client on your machine. And from that point on, you're just entering data and you're analyzing your data, you're moving forward. You never have to really deal with that again. I don't know what time it is, but probably went too fast. But this is my contact information. You can contact me, or you can go through the TXG. My information is there also. And with that, I think I'll stop, Karen, and just see if there's any questions of the group. And I think I will stop sharing. And that way I can see the chat box.
Thank you, Bruce. I don't see any questions in the chat box just yet. And if both of you would like to check your chat boxes just to make sure you don't see any questions. I don't see through my email, but if anyone has any after the fact, they could send them to me and I will be glad to forward them on.
Yep, I don't see any.
Okay. I see we had a comment though. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Please follow up with either myself or the TXG. Join the TXG group. That's
Oh, and also I was going to ask Bruce, is it okay if I share your presentation?
Oh, of course. Yes, I will. I'll
Okay.
send it to you after we're done here.
Okay, that's great. So if anyone would like a copy of that, I'll be happy to forward that out to everyone. So I don't see any other chats. So with that, we will go ahead and end this session for the day. So thank you, Bruce Robinson, and thank you, Bruce Jones, for presenting today. We really appreciate it. That was some great information. So I just wanted to remind everyone also to be sure and join us again Thursday morning, starting at 8:30 for the pesticides session. So actually I had a request for me. So they would like a copy of your slides, Bruce. So I will get with them on that. And I think that's it for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and everyone have a good evening.